right, well, here we are on the 5th week of this Growing Pains series, and today we're going to be exploring the dimension of uncertainty as a growing pain, as part of our process of evolution as human beings. But wherever these messages might be finding you in life, right? And whether it's today and we're talking about uncertainty, or the last couple of weeks we've talked about what it means to be a wounded healer. We've talked about how transformation always brings with it a level of discomfort. And I just hope that along the way that you're encouraged to think in your own heart, where are the growing pains showing up in my life? What are the growing pains that I'm feeling right now inviting me to? And something that would be helpful for us to recognize is that when it comes to life's growing pains, some of them are chosen, right? And then some of them aren't. We think about the ones we choose, right? Sometimes we choose to take a new job, to enter into a new relationship, to move cities, states, even countries, right? We make certain choices at times that we know, we can see are going to lead us into a new season of growth. And of course, that there's going to be some discomfort along the way. But there are also the growing pains that we do not choose. A diagnosis, a devastating loss, things that happen in our lives that we have no control over. And yet they are inviting us to, even pushing us into growth and evolution that come with a certain level of pain, of grief, of sadness. And I am truly speaking from the latter when it comes to my own experience right now, and something that I'm going through currently. This is a picture of my grandmother, and just about a week and a half ago, she passed away unexpectedly, and we were very close through, various stages of my life. I lived with her for about a sum total of 12 years, and she was a core figure in my life, certainly core in the life of our family, and so it's been a devastating loss. And I want to tell this story not just because it's my story, but because we all have been through this. We've all experienced loss. We've all experienced losses that destabilize our own lives. They destabilize the lives of our family, of entire communities. And so that is what I want to kind of share from in my own life today, partially. But before we get into that, of course, we know that when we're talking about the loss of life, it's also a celebration of life. So I just want to give you a few fun facts about my grandmother. The first is that I grew up always calling her Lola. See, she was born in the Philippines, and so in the language of Tagalog, grandmother is Lola. And so if you're a Filipino grandchild, you call your grandma Lola, and all my friends heard me calling her Lola, and so they would just call her Lola. And so she became everyone's Lola, and it truly felt like that. And that was really that was her true name in many ways. And, even in the hospital this past couple of weeks, the nurses were calling her Lola, and we would correct them if they called her anything else. She, in the later years of her life, one of her greatest pleasures was having the locations of all of her grandchildren on her phone, right? So she could track us at any given moment. She was just sitting in her lair, just because she could see what we were all up to, and it gave her a lot of comfort because, we were all out in different parts of the country doing our thing, and it just gave her, a lot of joy to be able to just see that everyone was okay. And there would be times where I would travel and I would forget to let her know that I was, say, going out of the country, and I would just get these frantic calls like, "What are you doing in Costa Rica? Like, what is going on?" Lastly, she had this beautiful garden in her backyard. I grew up with her having it my whole life, and as she got older, it was a little harder for her to maintain. So I would come visit, and she would always just have me come help her in the garden. And but it was interesting because she would say, "Jake, can you come here? I just need your help." And I always knew she was going to ask, and she would say, "Can you move this plant 1.5 inches to the left? And then can you move this one 0.5 inches to the right?" And at first I thought, okay, she's just got this whole system and I can't see it. But then I started to realize as I got older, her love language was acts of service. And she just knew how to get exactly what she needed, right? She knew she maybe she didn't know it cognitively, but I think subconsciously, she knew that her way of receiving love was through those acts of service. And so she would just know exactly what to ask for, even if it was moving a plant 0.5 inches to the right. It filled her heart, and so we all did it out of love. And it's just a reminder to you, right? If you know what your love language is, just ask for it. Just give people softballs, right, to fulfill that. But this past Wednesday, she would have been 84 years old. And so her passing was actually sudden, quite sudden for us. Even being in the hospital, doctors were really stumped and really couldn't figure out what exactly was going on with her. And so for her, in her experience, she's living, life as it is, normal in her home, one moment, and then the next she's in the hospital. She's hooked up to all these tubes, and all she knows is that something is seriously wrong. And I think sometimes that is very much what life can feel like for us, right? Maybe physically you've been through that exact circumstance, but maybe not. Maybe spiritually there are just times where life seems to be operating business as usual, and then all of a sudden, almost as if within a blink of an eye, you're in an entirely different reality, and things feel overwhelming, things feel bewildering, right? We feel lost, confused, scared. And so maybe some of the questions we ask are similar to some of the questions that she was asking me as I sat beside her bed in that hospital. She would look at me and just ask, why is this happening? What is even happening? And my response in that moment, maybe you've been in this very situation, but my response in this moment, the only truth I could muster was, I don't know. I don't know. We don't know. And we're so sorry. We're so sorry that this is happening to you. But I love you. We love you, right? And we're here. You're not alone. You're not alone in this moment. Whatever it is you're going through, you are not alone. And sometimes she would come back and she would say, am I dying? And again, the truth of the matter was, I don't know. I don't know. But you're here. I'm here. We're here together, right? You're not alone. And in many ways, I felt that reassurance to say, you're here, I'm here, is almost like saying, I'm witnessing you, right? Whatever this life is asking of you, bringing to you right now, we are witnessing you. We're seeing you. And sometimes I think that's really all we can do for each other. Because we all, on some level, are going through something similar. We all are asking questions like, what is happening? Why is this happening? What is going on right now? And this may be a very personal experience for you right now. You may be asking those very questions about a situation in your life that you just cannot make sense of, that is completely bewildering you. But I know for a fact that we all are feeling that on some level collectively, right? That we're experiencing in our world, in our country, a major shift, and we don't exactly fully understand the full extent of what is happening, right? We look at the news even this very week, right? Just waves of grief, outrage, confusion, polarization, that for so many of us just leave us asking why? What is even happening? But I think that all we can do for each other, maybe the best thing that we can offer each other, or maybe even the only true thing that we can offer each other, is presence in these moments. To say, I love you, I'm witnessing you, I'm right here, you're here, so here we are together in this. And I'm convinced that in many ways is what a community like Aldea is meant to be, a place where we can hold each other in our grief, in our unknowing, in our fear, to say, I see you, I witness you in whatever the growing pains of life are asking of you right now. And I think this naturally leads us to a conversation about the difference between faith and certainty. And we hear it in the words of Father Richard Rohr, who says, faith is not about everything turning out okay. Faith is about being okay no matter how things turn out. Friends, faith is not about certainty. Many of us were taught that it is. Right? Many of us grew up and we're sort of given this idea that faith is about getting rid of all shadows of a doubt. Right? But what's interesting, if you really think about it, is that faith is reserved for the things that we are uncertain about. Right? And so faith and doubt are not enemies. They're not antonyms of one another. It's actually faith and certainty that are more on opposing sides, because we need faith when we are not certain. I'll give you an example, right? I was up early, got to see a beautiful sunrise this morning, and I didn't really need any faith that the sun was going to rise this morning. It's risen every day of my life, right? I've never lived in that really remote part of Alaska where it does not rise for a couple months. So I've seen it rise. Well, I haven't personally seen it rise many of the mornings, but I know that it rises. And so you don't really need faith, right, to know that the sun's going to rise. We can have a level of certainty about that. I have certainty that when I drink coffee, within 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to need to use the bathroom. There's a certainty there. I don't need to take it on faith. So if we're going to talk about faith, I think we're going to talk about an entirely different dimension of life, an entirely different dimension of what it means to be human. See, many of us come from communities. We even maybe have had relationships and families that were built on certainty, built on secure and easy answers and solutions. And certainty can be comforting, right? Because think about our comfort zones. Our comfort zones are spaces, places, and experiences where we don't have to be challenged. We don't have to have any guesswork. We get to be completely certain about what is going to happen, which is why we rarely want to leave our comfort zones. They offer us a form of predictability, right? Where we get to know, or at least believe that we know what's going to happen in the future. And that feels incredibly comforting. I'm going to share something vulnerable with you, right? And I'm already talking about a hard moment in my life, so I'm going to get even more vulnerable. I'm a fan of Starbucks. That's the vulnerability. That's the share. And the reason I find it to be vulnerable is because I know that there are some of you out there who maybe judge me for that. Okay, you know who you are. You can feel it already. You're like, I thought he had good taste. And then he's getting on stage and he's proclaiming a love for Starbucks. But here's the thing. If you're like me and you enjoy Starbucks, it's possible that you enjoy it because it's incredibly predictable, right? That you can be fairly certain that across states and cities and different locations that things are going to taste kind of the same. And again, you naysayers out there might be saying, yeah, that's the problem, right? It's too consistent. Something's wrong there, right? But that's just one of those areas in life where we get to have a certain level of predictability that some of us, right, people like me, that we enjoy. Another place, maybe it's like in your media, your entertainment, right? Now, this one doesn't personally apply to me, but I understand. I would say that there are people who I know watch The Bachelor because it has a certain level of predictability and certainty. Now, I don't mean that the outcome is always predictable, but I do think it is pretty predictable that you can be certain when watching The Bachelor that you are not going to be intellectually stimulated or challenged. You can be certain when watching The Bachelor that you are not going to walk away thinking, wow, I have a really different perspective on life. I really learned something, right? And sometimes it's okay. Sometimes that's what we want from our entertainment. But that's an example of the certainties, the little certainties we get in life. But then what have we done over the past few thousand years? We've taken that desire for that level of certainty and pulled the invisible and the unknowable, right? Spirituality, religion, we pulled those things into our desire for certainty, our desire for predictability, our desire for easy answers and outcomes. And so the growing pains that I want to invite us to, both the pain and the growth that I want to invite us to today, is to recognize that certainty when it comes to our place in the universe, when it comes to God, reality, however you want to name it, there's a certain level of certainty that just is not part of the equation. And can we accept that? Can we embrace that? I want to give a couple of examples. Okay, how many of us have heard of quantum physics? Quantum physics is basically the study of subatomic particles and how they operate. There are particles, in fact, that are smaller than an atom. And when you go that small, things get very strange. So the thing about subatomic particles is you would imagine that the building blocks of all matter would be solid and predictable, but they are not. In fact, they've found that subatomic particles do not have any sort of predictable pattern of motion, of location, until they're observed. So you might have heard this age-old philosophical phrase like, if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? If no one's there to hear it, right? You've heard that. But when it comes to the realm of quantum physics, the way it goes is like this. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to witness it, it's taking every possible shape, form, until observed. That's how subatomic particles work. And so it's very strange. It still confounds scientists. And they just don't understand. Why is it that there's so much uncertainty about what these little particles do? And it's just interesting to remind ourselves that the building blocks of all reality are not based on certainties and predictability, but they're based on possibility. It's all about possibility. It's all about potentials. And so I'd encourage you to think about this in your own life. Have you found this to be true in your own life? That perhaps the moments and experiences that were the building blocks of your life and your reality were not based on the things you could be certain about, the things that were easily predictable. Maybe the most significant and impactful moments in your life had a level of uncertainty around them, a level of I don't know baked into the equation. So that's on the really small end, okay? Really, really small, like we cannot see. But on the large end of things, right, we're talking about our place in the cosmos and the universe. What we do know is that everything that we can see, right, galaxies, planets, our own planet, like stars, all of it, that matter makes up about 5% of the universe, okay? And so the rest of the universe is made up of a few things, dark matter and dark energy. And essentially, dark matter and dark energy supposedly hold the keys to where we come from, how the universe works, why the universe is expanding the way it is. The problem with dark matter and dark energy is that we don't even know what it is. So it's called dark because it remains a mystery to us. And yet this very thing that makes up the vast majority of our universe, which we don't even understand, can't even observe, it seems as though it's holding everything together. And I wonder if you've ever felt that way, that even if your life felt like it was in chaos or in shambles, it felt like even if you couldn't see it, even if you couldn't understand it, like there was something holding it all together for you. And the point I want to make is that on both the smallest scale and on the largest scale, there is a deep uncertainty built into the fabric of the universe. And I wonder what it would mean for us, instead of turning away from that, right? Naturally, it brings up some fear. But instead of turning away from that, what if we turned towards it? What if we didn't need certainty like we thought we did? The universe has been operating without it for about 14 billion years, and things seem to be going okay, right? Adyashanti says, to live in the mystery, to dwell in the unknowable, that is the practice of presence. As I sat next to that hospital bed where my Lola sat and laid, I wanted to be in truth. I wanted to be in raw honesty with her and in a shared reality with her. And the truth, my deepest truth in that moment, was that I was uncertain. But the good news that arose for me in that experience is that great love and great uncertainty can coexist. I believe this now more than ever, that great love and great certainty can coexist. Because, friends, certainty is so often concerned with the future, right? How can I control what's going to happen? But may we remember that it is in the present moment, it is in the here and now. There is nothing that we need to be certain about right here and right now, other than here you are, here I am, here we are together. That's it. So when we choose to love, that's always happening in the moment. Anything outside of the moment is a concept, right? The past, the future, they're ideas, right? But love is happening in the moment. And so when we love unconditionally, right? Love, period, which is our motto here, we're loving outside of certainty. Certainty doesn't determine whether we love or not. In fact, when we say love, period, we're saying, I'm choosing to love without any promise of what that means, right? I'm doing it because love for its own sake is worth it, right? As Roger said, it's all that truly matters in the end. But naturally, if we don't get the certainty that we're so used to, it brings with it an element of risk. It's always risky, right? As Alan Watts says, risk is essential. There is no growth without risk and no meaningful life without risk. Everything's risk. Coming here this morning is a risk. I know some of you, we are like Tucson drivers, right? And you're thinking, yeah, for sure. Coming here is a risk. Not coming here is a risk, right? Maybe you came here and heard something or felt something or had a conversation today that truly down the road might save your life, right? And so coming here is a risk. Not coming here is a risk. Everything we do holds an element of risk. Everything we don't do holds an element of risk. And so the beauty is realizing that we as human beings, we get to choose what's worth risking for. If we can embrace the fact that there is always some level of risk in life, no amount of money can completely eliminate risk. No amount of money can promise you certainty. A friend of mine recently said that even Jeff Bezos cannot freeze the universe in place. Right? No amount of money can possibly get rid of all uncertainty. And if we can embrace that as part of our experience of being human, perhaps that opens up a freedom that we can see that, wow, if I can just accept that there's always going to be risk, then I'm free. I'm free because I don't have to lead from fear. I get to lead now with my heart. And I'm curious for you, what would be on the other side of that? If you could let go of that need for certainty, of that need for promise, that there's never going to be a risk or danger, and if you could embrace that as part of the fabric of human life, and you could say, wow, then I'm free to live and become who I feel called to be. What would that mean for you, right? Who would you become? What would you do? If you could live in the, as Deepak Chopra says, the fertile ground of uncertainty, where pure creativity and freedom live. Uncertainty is the fertile ground of pure creativity and freedom. I think about our community as we, venture into this new chapter or two services, and certainly there is a risk in making a change of that magnitude. But of course, there is a risk in not doing it. So, choose the one that is a reflection of your values. Choose the one that is following love rather than fear. And the same goes for you, right? There's that thing for you. I know it is for all of us. There's something probably that's coming up right now. And you're like, do I do the thing? Do I don't do the thing? And the reality is if you could just accept that you cannot be certain about the outcome of either, there's risk either way, you're actually free. Right? Because then you get to lead with your heart. I lost my grandmother this week, and certainly it didn't all work out the way that she would have wanted it to. And the same goes for all of us. I can't look at you and tell you that everything is going to work out the way that you would hope or you have planned. But I can tell you this, and I know your friends in this room can tell you this. We're here for you. You're here. Right? So we're here together. I see you. I love you. And I think in many ways, that's the love period that we're really searching for. Not a love that says, I'm going to protect you from anything bad that could ever happen to you, or I'm going to promise you that life is always going to be safe and secure and operate according to your plans. That's impossible, right? We cannot offer that to one another. But what we can tell each other in truth is to say, I will be with you and I will walk with you amidst the uncertainties of life, among the growing pains that life is going to call you to. Right? As you leave this place today, I encourage you just to lock eyes with some people. And in those moments, realize that these are some of the people that are going to witness you and walk with you through all of the unknowns, or at least some of the greatest unknowns that you might ever face. That these are the people, if you let them, if you open yourself up to that, that'll walk with you through the growing pains of life. And maybe that's what Ram Dass was talking about when he said we're all just walking each other home. That we can, if nothing else, walk hand in hand, right, towards whatever life is asking of us. So here's my encouragement. Here's my invitation for you today. Aldea, what level of uncertainty are you willing to embrace? Are you willing to accept as part of life so that you can open up to the love and to the connection that is right here, right now?